Hello, 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 everyone. I am Rosalind Brown of Your Wealth Guidance, where we help Black women create their financial independence map and identify the tools for success so you can live life on your own terms. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a Great Money Monday speaker. Today, we have Courtney Orgias. She is a digital nomad mom who, along with her husband Justin and their two small children, sold everything to pursue a life of full time global travel. With the goal of raising her children as global citizens, finding financial freedom, and promoting greater diversity and representation in the family travel space. She aims to help empower other families to take control of their lifestyle. And I know so many people out there, they're like, I travel, I love to travel, but when the kids come, I might not be able to. Or I know some people are saying, I want to move abroad, but I can't because I have kids, or I want to have kids. And so I really was excited about hearing this story, having Courtney kind of share her journey because it's possible. And so I always say sometimes your vision is simply limited by if you see or know something or see someone else doing the same thing. And so I want to just start with Courtney. Tell us, what was the sign or your motivation to change from this like traditional, get married, buy a house, live in, the cookie cutter neighborhood and raise your children in, suburban America somewhere and have this lifestyle for your family? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, it's funny. I talk about this with my husband all the time, and we very much got married and we had the kids, and it's one boy and one girl, and we bought the house, and we did the whole thing. And I think at some point, and probably a little bit due to COVID, we realized this isn't all it was cracked up to be. It got to a point, I think, especially because of the pandemic. Our son was at home with us during the day with a nanny. So our house became a daycare. And then also, we're both working from home. So it's also office space. And then, we're finished working and we're too tired to leave. So it turned into a situation where, this beautiful life, this dream, this American dream that we built kind of started to feel like, I don't want to say a cage, right? Because that feels a little bit dramatic, but it did feel kind of like, we've rearranged everything, we've built up, what we were told we were supposed to have. And now we wake up every day and it's like Groundhog Day, and we're just not fulfilled by it. Um, so I think, especially once I was pregnant with our second, she's 4 months now, it really became a thing where it's like, we either make a change now, right now, or every day is going to be, like yesterday and the day before it, and it's just going to get more and more difficult to make that big shift.
Now, so it was more of you saying, I want to, and he's like, was he hesitant? Was he like, all right, makes sense, let's do it?
um, you know my favorite thing I think about Justin is that we're best friends first. So I think it started out with very much of like, hey, like, what do you think about selling everything we own and leaving the States? And he's very much like, what? But he was willing to hear me out. And, that's something I do appreciate, because then it turned into a thing of like, well, let's think about it. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. And Justin's actually Canadian. And so even living in the US, he's very much like, well, I'm not even from here anyway. And so I think that opened up the conversation. He was open to it. We both had that feeling of like, I don't know if this, Georgia suburb life is going to work. So it wasn't too hard to convince him. I think after the initial kind of like sticker shock of what I was proposing wore off, he was excited to do some research with me.
Now, how many countries have you been to thus far? So you all started this journey not too long ago, but how many countries have you all kind of bopped around to thus far?
Um, Let me see. I'm much more of a different cities person. Sorry, just one second. I actually hear the baby crying. She's teething, so I need to have Justin give her this teething oil. It's hard to count. Let me see. I think I counted the other day. I know Xavier has been to 6, and he's
Wow.
not even quite 3 yet. And Whitley is on her third, and she's only 4 months.
Oh,
As for
wow.
me, I think I've been to somewhere around 12, maybe. But again, even if you think about all the time we spent in Mexico, we've been to Tulum, Cancun, we've been to Playa. We're currently based in Guadalajara. So I'm very much more of like a different cities, different vibes person, as opposed to just the passport stamps in the country. Because there's so much beauty, in a town that's only a couple hours away from a different city.
Now, that's a good point too, as you talk about kind of place to place to place. How long are you staying in a particular city?
Um, it all really depends. So right now we're in Mexico on a tourist visa, which gives you 180 days. And once that's up, we're going to be somewhere else. But we talked about it, Justin and I, and if we were to get somewhere and kind of not really like it or feel like it's not for us after being there for a few weeks, we've given ourselves permission definitely to move on. So I think depending on, visas and vibes and just how we feel about it, we're keeping it very fluid. Um, which I think is nice. I love the freedom of being able to say, well, let's just try something new. And if we don't like it, we'll just pack up and go. I think he very much prefers the stability of kind of like planning on being somewhere.
Knowing where you're going next or when you're leaving.
Yeah, he's very much like, let's, sit down somewhere for 6 months, 9 months. But I do think anywhere from like a 90-day minimum up to 6 months to 9 months is kind of like my ideal. We definitely want to make sure we're slow traveling and really getting a chance to like appreciate, the different places where we're spending time.
Now, I mean, that one you can actually enjoy, get to know, see, like you said, the vibes and see if it's someplace you might want to spend a little bit more time. But then how did you prepare? So you're like, I got this idea, you know, you sell everything. Did you leave everything? What was the prep time or the time from idea to, okay, let's hop on a plane?
It was, let's see, it was October of last year that I said, I want to pick up and move. And we actually exited the US on Juneteenth of this year. So that's mid June, June 19th. So that's like what's that, 9 months? 9 months from idea to execution. But that's also just how we do everything. Everything that we do, from buying a house to like having our babies, we're kind of just, okay, let's do it. And then immediately we hop on it.
I love that. Just like before you can even start to doubt yourself, like, let me just do
Exactly.
it. And then I love the Juneteenth, just kind of like the symbolism of it all too.
It
Was
just
that
happened.
purposeful or?
No, it was very serendipitous. We had to wait to book our tickets and accommodation in Mexico because we were waiting on the baby's passport. Whitley was only like 2.5 months at that point. So we were like, okay, as soon as her passport gets here, we're going to go. And it just so happened that the best flight out was on Juneteenth. And I actually have a t-shirt that has like the date and like a fist on it that like I wore on the plane. And I took a picture where I'm like holding her and I'm just like, this is so beautiful, right? Because it's just another step toward freedom, right? And I mean, I wish I had the forethought to plan it out that way, but it just so happened. And I think, afterwards when we got settled and I was like, wow, we really did this. And this is how we did it. And this is when we did it. It kind of hit me that it was just the best date we could have picked.
Oh, wow. Now, how do you think this journey would be different if you had no children? So, as you're planning and prepping and those kind of things.
Mm, yeah. I think about that. There are lots of digital nomads out there that don't have kids. And, to an extent, I envy them, right? It's so much easier to move when you don't have to think about nap time and, little people and baby carriers and strollers in the airport. Um, I think I would probably spend less time places. And I think while I was based in certain locations, I would travel more. So being here in Guadalajara, we've planned trips to Tulum, Oaxaca, Puerto Escondido, Puerto Vallarta. We want to really see the country of Mexico while we're based centrally. And I think if it were just me nomadically, I'd probably be somewhere different every 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so.
And see, that's a really good point. Just kind of seeing more, but also being planted a little bit longer, especially having the kids. Now, does that help you kind of plan out or see what's going on, or even just make it less stressful in the overall traveling? Saying, okay, we're going to do 3, 6, maybe 9 months versus, like you said, maybe 2 or 3 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it might be if it were just you and your husband.
Yeah, I am grateful that we've decided to kind of go like the home base route this way. I think it definitely gives us more time to kind of like consider the practicalities of living somewhere. So I think it's very easy when you're just by yourself to you know, eat out or take public transit or Uber, right? Like there are small conveniences, but when you have like little people, you get a completely different perspective of what it's like. Even I think oftentimes about different kind of like accessibility measures every time we travel because we have this double stroller. And it's something that if I didn't have the stroller, it wouldn't be even something I considered. You hop on the train, off the train, up the stairs, down the stairs. But with the stroller, it's kind of like, oh, it gives you a whole nother layer of perspective and understanding. I think too about like parks and like green space and being able to like see cities from that vantage point. I would, I'm not like a public park person when I'm by myself. But my son sees a swing set and it's like, phew, he's booking it. So I think it adds a layer of richness onto how you really get to experience and explore the city and where you are. And I definitely think it makes it all the sweeter to feel like you're really like living somewhere as opposed to just visiting.
Now, that's a great point because is it your ultimate goal to will plant roots somewhere abroad, or is it to continue this kind of float around maybe every 9 months or so?
Hmm. You know, we haven't decided yet. We really haven't. And that's a question we get often. And it's a question I think we ask ourselves often too. I think if we just really fell in love with somewhere, if we just really felt at home, we would be willing to go through the process to, consider residency and stay there long term. But I also think right now, especially before the kids are school age, we really want to spend as much time just traveling as we can. I have, this whole vision of going all the way south through South America and then heading to Europe, the Mediterranean, and going north and then down and making a, zigzag around Africa. And, I want to see everything. I'm hungry for it. And I guess, if we fall in love somewhere along the way and decide to put down some roots, that'll be just fine too. We'll still be traveling, but I think it'll look, more like a traditional, you know, vacation sort of travel as opposed to the slow travel we're doing now.
Now, the kids, and you mentioned the kids are babies now, but things might be different, especially as they get to school age. Have you thought that out or had a plan for, okay, are you going to homeschool or what is that going to look like for them?
Yeah, again, I wish I had like a great answer for for you. I'm kind of on team homeschool with local cultural enrichment activities to supplement. Um, Justin is more on the mind of like they need some type of like structured school, even if it's not like a traditional, US, you sit down and you're in a chair for 8 hours type of situation. So I know like in Bali and they're building one in Tulum, they have like a green school that's very like outdoor, nature based, artsy.
Mhm.
And I've seen some of like the schools they have like in Costa Rica and through Central America that feel more like they might be a good fit for our family, where their kids are outside like caring for animals and learning how to garden. So again, I think it depends. Wherever they are, though, I definitely want them in activities, especially if we can get them in activities with like local kids. So like right now, Xavier actually just had his first swim class today.
Mhm.
A friend of ours who's actually also a Black expat from the U.S. He and her daughter are taking swim together. So I see things like this, and we go to a park, and like the local kids of Guadalajara, he's made like a couple friends there. So I have a vision that's very much rooted in more of like a world schooling, homeschooling kind of way, as long as they're really able to get that stimulation from like the environment and meet local kids and get engaged in activities. But again, it's kind of like TBD, because we also have to take into consideration what the kids are going to want to do, what they're going to like to do. As they get older, they may not want to move as much. And, we can't just drag them all over the world, if they kind of want like a more solid home base.
Now, I think that's a really good point, kind of overall, as things continue to evolve and change. Are there countries where you've seen maybe it's easier? I mean, in comparison, especially to the United States, to raise children to give them more kind of a well rounded experience?
Hmm. Yeah. We think about that everywhere we go. I think definitely, I don't want to say anything badly about the US, right? We all,
It's a different
we
experience.
all know the issues and the things and the whatever. But I do think when we go other places to other countries, whether it's in Europe or it's in Latin America, even when we went up to Canada, it feels very much more like children are considered, right? Like when malls and restaurants are built, you see a lot more like little people chairs or like playgrounds like in there, or like a little cubby with like kids' books. You see more people out like with children enjoying them. You see more parks and kind of like random places. That was one thing I loved about Portugal. Like we turn a corner and there's just like a park there, and it's like fenced in, like in the middle of everything. So, I think there are a lot of different places that are just kind of better for kids. Um, and that's something that's important to me, because as my kids grow, I want them to feel like they have the ability to really be like members of society, and they're like, you know, there's space for them, as opposed to, I feel like in a lot of places in the US where it's more like, the kids go over there and the adults go over here, and, we'll call you when we need you. Which is a big thing. And even the way that schooling is done, and the breaks and being able to, walk home for lunch, and the independence that they get and things like that. Um, I definitely think it's better in a lot of other areas. We were very impressed with Portugal, and everything that we saw there as far as like children and like family related things go.
And that's a really good point. I know you talked about wanting to create more of a vision or an image of Black families living this lifestyle. How is it different? Or, as we look at the family community of this nomadic lifestyle, how many Black people do you typically see? Do you typically interact with? Is it hardly any? And then, of course, what are you seeing in terms of kind of the community as a whole?
Yeah. It's interesting. When we first started doing our research on what it would look like, you go to Google and you start typing things in, right? And you're like full-time family traveler, like digital nomad family, right? And the keywords, and, just like everything else in the algorithms, the first things that pop up, it's going to be white people. And so you're like, okay, well, let me go back. And you're like, Black digital nomad. And you
Gotta be
kind of,
very
right.
specific.
You're like, no, I want to see me. And there aren't a whole lot of us, I feel like, out there that are super visible. We're out there. We're out there. I found Fro Family Travels. They're some of our faves. We actually just accidentally ran into them in Playa del Carmen the last time we were there. Um, there are some people that we know. There are lots of groups on Facebook where people are really living this lifestyle, but it feels almost like behind the curtain. I feel like a lot of things in the Black community, where they're like, that's the, white people stuff, or that's what, they do. That's not what we do, and there's that kind of mentality around it. And it's like, no, this can really be something beautiful that my toddler just, crash the party. But it's like, no, this can really be something beautiful, um, that we can do, that we have access to. And one thing that we want to instill in our children for sure is that we belong in these spaces. There's no part of the world where you don't belong. There's nowhere we can't go. There's nothing that we can't do. And so, part of the mission is to be able to empower other families to also make these leaps and to do these things, and to give them the confidence and hopefully some of the resources.
I think that's a really good point of just kind of seeing. And I always say, anytime you look at anything, whether it's the fire community and people retiring early, you're like, are there people who look like me doing this? Like, where are the people? And those people exist. We might have to do a little more digging, but those people definitely exist. One question, especially as you're talking about family, what did the rest of your family say? What are they saying now? Like, hey, how long y'all gonna be gone? Or, or we're happy that you're
Oh,
enjoying it.
getting them on board was, I mean, it's twofold, because on the one hand, they know us, they know me and Justin, they know that we're going to do what we want to do when and how we want to do it. But honestly, I think past the initial, those concerns we all get when we travel, like, oh, is it going to be safe? What are you going to do? And what about school? And are there hospitals? My grandmother is very like, oh, what if something, but I think they're excited, honestly. We've been met along this journey with a lot more excitement than I anticipated. I think a lot of people kind of have been looking at what we're doing, people in our family, and they're like, that's kind of neat. I wish I could, or I wish I had, or like I would love to. And so I think that's, a big thing, especially Justin's family. His grandparents are all from Grenada, and then he's from Canada. And so they've done a lot of moving around. He has family in the UK. So, they're no strangers to travel. I think, especially our parents, we've given them an excuse to buy plane tickets to places they haven't been before. So.
Now that's really good. Now you talked about especially going from place to place, or even people to come gym. Hey, and so as we think about how you are traveling, we talked about this a little bit. There is the carry on only people. There is the I'm a pack 20 bags when we go. How are you all packing up and traveling from location to location?
We've only made the one big move so far, and we had 3 checked bags and 1 carry-on. And I think that worked pretty well. The only thing is kind of like navigating them through the airport with all of this baggage and these kids and the stroller is kind of a lot. I think next time we're going to try to send the big luggage ahead and sort of see how that works. So again, like, the fun thing, read stressful, the fun thing about what we're doing is that we're keeping it very fluid. And so a lot of it still at this point is trial and error. But I think that's great too, because now we have the opportunity to make mistakes and be able to come back to other people, that are following us on Instagram, or our family, or people that want to live a lifestyle like this, and be like, hey, like, here's what you don't do, as well as, here's what you do.
Now that's a good point too. So people are out there like, this is so overwhelming. What can I do? What should I do? What mistakes do I want to avoid? What are some of the things you kind of learned and said, okay, you just talked about maybe all the suitcases, trying to send those ahead. What are some other kind of lessons or mistakes that you might have made along the way to say, okay, we're not going to do that way again. We're going to do something a little bit different. Or as you're talking through the community that you have, to say, I didn't think we could do it that way. Let's try it that way. What are some of those lessons learned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the bigger lessons when traveling with kids, especially the way that travel this summer has been, it's been hectic and it's been chaotic. We had a situation where we had some canceled and delayed flights. Things were very difficult, and we were in the airport for 13 hours. And Justin and I looked at each other, and this is last week, and we're like, hey, no matter what happens with this travel, we need to make sure that the children are safe and comfortable. Like, we've got to get out of this airport. We can't argue with these people over this lost bag. We need to just find somewhere that, we can lay our babies down and make sure they're good. And I think that's a big difference. When you're a single person, if you need to sleep on an airport floor or whatever, you know what I mean, while you wait for your flight, you can do that. But with the kids, I think it's very much a thing of like knowing your limits and your boundaries and being mindful that you're respecting your children, right? And keeping what's best for them at the forefront. It's easy to get lost in, lines and delays, and you're mad about your luggage and things. I think the other thing is we got this fantastic giant travel wallet with all of our passports, our visas, all of that sort of stuff. Get one of those if you don't have one. They're so great. It's so easy with the chaos of children and lines and, boarding pass or passport or Visa card, to keep everything in place. And I think the other thing is Xavier does so much better on an airplane when we bring his booster seat, which is something that wouldn't have occurred to me, a booster seat or a car seat on an airplane. But he's definitely more comfortable that way. And it's easier for us too, right? To keep kind of in one.
And then he just gets used to it. He gets into his own routine overall in terms of, okay, I'm taking another flight. I think more parents are learning that kids can get used to these things too and get into their habit. Everybody has their, their plane packing, as if it's your blanket or your neck pillow or whatever that is. You just have to figure out what the kids' thing is too. Now, when you think about your childhood versus, or even your husband's childhood versus what this childhood that you're creating for your children looks like, what are some of the main differences, or what are some of the things you want to make sure are going to be different for them?
I want to make sure that my American-born children understand that the U.S. is not at the center of everything. I think, growing up in the US and going through the US public education system, the history and everything that you're taught is, it's US centric, right? And I think there's a certain level of xenophobia that then becomes ingrained in you, right? Because this is just the best country in the world. And, and it wasn't until I think I was in college, I did a study abroad in Copenhagen, that my mind really expanded. And I was like, wow, people all over the place, all over the world, they do things differently. They live differently and they're flourishing. Like there's a different way to live and do things. And I very much want to be able to give our children the perspective of knowing that and understanding it. And also having a respect for cultural relativism. Certain foods, Xavier's gotten to the point where certain foods are yucky, right? And so it's a conversation about it's not yucky, it's just different, but we have to be respectful and mindful that other people, for other reasons, eat other things. And, even the way that jobs are set up, that schooling is set up, all of these things, it's just really important that they have perspective. I feel like a lot of that, lacks when you're American born and bred.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's a really good point. Even especially, most Americans know one language and we expect everyone to speak English and so forth. Now, are the babies also learning, especially since you're in Mexico right now? Are they learning Spanish? Do you plan to, I'm always amazed at how many people know like 5 or 6 languages. And I'm like, what?
Yes, the polyglots blow my mind. People are like, I speak English, Spanish, French, Creole, Portuguese, and a little Italian. And you're like,
what?
Wow. Yes, actually. So we are all in the process currently of learning Spanish, which is going. Whitley, I think, because she's so little, is probably going to pick it up though before any of that.
And so they'll probably know like 5 or 6 languages, and hopefully then they'll be able to teach you a little bit more, but especially being immersed in it, especially if they're going to do some of those kind of learning experience and so forth, that would really make a big deal. Daia says she's preaching the U.S. is not the center of the universe, and you definitely realize that when you leave the United States and you're like, you didn't know that? They're like, no, that's not the way it is. That doesn't make sense. So it's a great situation to really change perspective at an early age, opposed to kind of waiting until later. Now, I know you've talked about, okay, maybe you all will kind of have some home bases and so forth. What
Mhm.
does that look like for you in terms of, okay, we'll have home base here, home base there, home base there? Is it to spend more time in a particular place? Is it to give maybe the kids a chance to say, okay, maybe we'll have a doctor in this place and a doctor in this place? What does that kind of look like for the family?
Yeah, I think it's right. The grand vision, I think, is to find places we love and establish bases there. And ideally, that serves as, a landing spot for us during our travels, but also as a source of passive income. So, as we travel and really fall in love with places, being able to establish residences, I think we were talking a little bit about this, right? Having somewhere to kind of like, store some stuff and, a crash pad, but also while we're not there and we're off enjoying other places, it's making us money. Those passive income streams are just so crucial, right? Especially as you travel and you want the freedom. So I think those multiple reasons are fantastic. And then also, right now I don't have a huge interest on just constantly revisiting places we've already been. But the ones that are really special, we will want to come back. And so making sure that, instead of having to find a hotel or an Airbnb, we already know where we're going to be, what shops are around, is very exciting for us.
I love that kind of in the overall grand scheme of things. And also just talking about the passive income. We talk about passive income over and over and over again here, but it's a part of your overall kind of financial independence goal. And, some people are like, wait, did they quit their job and do this? So you all are still working your full time jobs, correct?
Yes. Yep. We're both clocking into our 9 to 5s.
So you're clocking in, you're doing your 9 to 5. What does your financial independence kind of look like? Are you saying, once we get X amount of passive, we're going to do X? Are we just going to work until we get tired? What does that kind of look like? Because I love the vision of you can have kids, you still work your job, all those kind of things, and still live this lifestyle.
Yeah. We talk about it a lot at this juncture with us both. So also, to back up a little bit, so Justin and I both work for tech startups. And so the nice thing about that is that um, tech pays well. Tech has great perks. We have unlimited PTO. We both have great company cultures. We also have access to stock options. So the kind of long game, right, of like betting on our horse, betting on our company is definitely there with the stock. um, I think we're kind of at a place where once we feel like our passive income is at a certain point, we can decide kind of like which one of us wants to quit first, and then keep bringing in those regular paychecks, because who doesn't love a regular paycheck, but using those to be able to fund the passive income streams that will ultimately lead to our freedom. um, so that's kind of where we're at with it now. I think, looking at real estate, looking at, investing. We have kind of a couple things, that we've been, oh, I'm sorry, that's the baby. A couple of things that we've been working on, and kind of letting marinate. But at this point, we're just very invested in using our 9 to 5 income to kind of like fund our access to those passive streams.
And that's a really good point. One, it's you're living the dream while still working on the dream at the same time, which I think is something sometimes people are like, can I do both? And so, yes, you can do both. We've talked about, having a career in tech. So if you didn't see that, there's a number of people who've talked about transitioning to tech. But I think one of the big things too is just kind of looking at the grand scheme of how you can make this happen. And you don't have to wait until you can definitely put a lot of things in motion at the same time. Now, especially making money in different countries, living in different countries, are there financial impacts or things that you have to make sure you either track or are aware of? Are there countries that are more friendly for you to be able to make US income in their country?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the beautiful thing about our current jobs is that we can work from anywhere. In that we're not applying for, residency or any special kind of like digital nomad or remote work visas at this time. We don't have tax implications if we're just here on a tourist visa. In the future, again, as we kind of figure it out and maybe we settle here and maybe we do this, maybe we do that, that may change. But one of the best things about us making this leap now is that the dollar is so strong, for other currencies. So being in, Mexico, Colombia, Costa Rica, wherever we wind up next, right? Knowing that we're coming in with a strong currency and in a place with a lower cost of living, like, again, it allows us to, one, have luxuries that, we couldn't afford at home, right? Like simple things, right? Like housekeeping, having a nanny for each child, as
Oh,
opposed to
wow.
the I know. I told my mom, and I think she about fainted. You're doing what? But
That's
you
rich
know,
people stuff.
for, for full transparency, the nanny service here, it's 80 pesos an hour, which is under $4 US.
Oh my
So
goodness.
right. So to have two, right, and it's less than $10 an hour US, it's, compared to what we were paying at home for our kids to have, the one-on-one attention and someone to speak to them in Spanish, with what we're doing, we're able to have more and spend less and still have enough to put toward those passive income streams. Because we did talk about waiting. We did talk about waiting until we had X amount of money or X amount of investments or whatever to move. But when you sit down and you do the math of, what you make and where you're going and what all that kind of looks like as far as, numbers are concerned, it makes a lot of sense to just go immediately.
And we got a whole bunch of people that are like, wow, that's good information. And I think that's part of it is people are thinking, I'm going to pick up my life and move it to X place. Can I afford that? And not taking into account the difference in the currency and how far the dollar goes. What are some of the other kind of, luxuries or big differences in terms of spend? Because I know a bunch of people are like, oh my gosh, maybe this does make sense. Somebody gonna join you down in Mexico next.
Come, it's right over here. Come. Yeah, I think the other thing, the accommodations. So we're apartment hunting in Guadalajara. So one thing that we looked at doing early on in the journey, we looked at what like the monthly cost on Airbnb, what that would look like, right, as opposed to like renting. And while you can find some nice places on Airbnb monthly, especially if you need something smaller, like we're a family of four, we needed like 3 bedrooms minimum. Both of us are working. We decided to use a local real estate agent and find an apartment to rent. Our rent here is so much cheaper than what it is in the US. And, you can get somewhere really nice in Guadalajara, I'd say US for, we have a 3 bedroom, anywhere from like 1,200 a month for something super nice up to like, 15 to, it just depends on what you want, right? There are a lot of high-rise condos here. So we're actually in like a high-rise condo. We have a beautiful view. There are amenities, right? There's like a spa in the building. There are a couple pools. Like, it's just really nice. And it's so much cheaper than the US. And when you really get into like, some of these Facebook groups or deep dive into the internet and you start looking at what you can have for so much less, like, coming from Metro Atlanta, like I know people pay over 2 grand a month for 1 bedrooms.
Exactly.
two
Yeah.
grand a month here is gonna really, huge and lovely and beautiful, like waterfall marble countertops, nice. So I think that's the other thing, having more for less is just, you can't beat it, especially if you're on a financial independence journey.
Now, there are some countries that are more expensive than the United States. And so when you think about kind of as you go through your journey and go south and then hit over to Europe, especially, are you thinking maybe those will be some shorter term trips just because of the cost? and then maybe longer term in some of the areas where you get a lot more kind of mileage out of your dollar?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We've talked about that. I think the thing about Europe, so lovely. We love it there. We were just in Amsterdam earlier this year. We fell in love. It's one of my favorite parts of the world. Um, but yeah, very expensive. The nice thing though is that it's small. So you look at, I know a lot of expats love Lisbon. They say, the cost of living there is great. There are also some places in Spain, like Seville, where it's less than the US, at least the major cities in the US, but you will be paying more than in Latin America. So I think being in one of those areas where it's still, affordable, very affordable to live, and just taking those trips, to Paris or London or, whatever you like is nice. That's a great thing about Europe is, it's so small and it has such great infrastructure and railway. The flights are cheap. So being able to find somewhere in Europe that's inexpensive and kind of use that then as the base to explore more of the continent, especially if you're in the EU, because then it's just a breeze,
Yeah,
to kind
a
of go from
train.
country, place to place. Yeah.
Now, in comparison, so you went to college, and so you have, your college girlfriends and so forth, and they have done the same, get married, have kids, buy a house. How are they observing this lifestyle? Are they saying, I wish I could do the same? Are they saying, oh my God, I can't believe you did that? What is that conversation like? Because everybody is kind of in those same stages as they go through life and have that get married and have kids type stage. What kind of feedback are they giving you there?
Yeah. You know, I've got one of my friends, she is, planning her exodus next, right? She's in that stage. She has a couple of kids. I think, her youngest is about 3, her oldest is like 13. And so more moving parts to consider, but she's definitely at a place where, she's kind of looking like, okay, well, let me know how it is over there because I'm, doing recon. And I have other friends that are kind of just like, wow, this is like so cool. I'm going to stay here, but I really love watching your journey. Come spring break, we'll meet up with you in Mexico or, wherever you are. I think it's nice though. I do feel, and I kind of hate to say this because it sounds like kind of tooting my own horn, but it feels like people are a little inspired, even if what they want to do isn't, becoming an expat or digital nomad. I think doing something that looks from the outside like it's very difficult or it's very impossible or very hard to achieve, regardless of what your goal is, I think there's some hope in that. We all want different things out of life. And when you see someone accomplish something or really start to do something that seems very difficult, I do think it sparks a little fire, under you. And that's what I feel from most of them, is this thing of like, well, if you can do that, I can, whether it's go get this extra degree or change jobs or move states or, whatever it is. And I think that's lovely. So the group chat is lit, everyone's winning, everyone's excited, everyone's taking big leaps.
Now, this is a good question, and I'm quite sure everybody's saying the same thing. What is the secret to being overseas long term in hair products?
Oh, you know, ugh. So there are two things. As a natural, I will say I'm definitely still navigating that. I think simplicity though. I'm a very simple natural. So I'm very much shampoo, deep condition, leave in, oil to seal, and twist it up, braid it up, something like that. Um, So as far as the hair products go, I think you can ship them in from Amazon delivers here, which is something that is very intuitive. But I think it's easy
It's
to
like,
forget. I panicked when I came. I panicked. I was like, "How? My yellow panics." I panicked. But the other thing that's nice, I think, is finding community. So like we're in a bunch of Facebook groups for Black expats in insert location, and someone's got the plug or someone is headed to the U.S. and they'll bring you a bottle
an
of
extra suitcase full of.
so there's always something like that. One thing about Black people, we're going to come together, we're going to figure it out. So I definitely think that's a big thing.
That's a really good question. I know somebody's like, hold on.
I know that's the thing, but I would say too, like, keep it simple. I went to the store to find a heat protectant, so I could blow out my hair, and there's slim pickings, but I didn't bring any from the US. So I had to just kind of, make do. So I'd say definitely simplicity, flexibility, and, worst case scenario, hopefully someone can mail you a care package, if you have finicky hair.
You'll figure it out. Everybody will figure it out. Somebody will, like you said, somebody will be the plug, and they're
Mhm.
like, I got something at the house. I got a little something I can share. Now, what are some other things? People talk about. It's funny. I was watching. I can't remember what the video was, but they were talking about like things they can't necessarily get where they are. I'm a Southern girl too, so I'm from Georgia. I'd be like, y'all ain't got no grits. So what are some other like staples? I know some people are like, I want to bring back this spice. What are some other staples that you're like, in my travels, I can never find this? We make sure we put a little, hot sauce in your bag or whatever that might be.
I've been wanting some crab legs. And it's probably just because we're not coastal, I know that crabs exist everywhere, but low country boils like they make back home, those don't
Yes.
exist everywhere, you know? I think it's the little things like that. I think even understanding that, like, even if there is something that you want and you are able to find it, it's not going to be exactly the same. I had to come to terms, even something as simple as like mashed potatoes, like they're just different here. The ingredients are different, the potatoes are different, the style of preparation is different, things of this nature. I have been wanting some grits. I've been wanting some so bad. And it's funny to say that because in one of the groups, people were like, they don't have grits here. They don't have grits here. And someone was like, if you get some microwave popcorn and put it in a blender, like high speed and blend it. And I'm like, what? We're kids now, which, don't judge me, but I'm about to try it.
You're like, oh, maybe that'll.
Because I think the other thing is a lot of these things you can get, it's going to be so much more expensive. Whether you have to have someone send them to you or get them imported or buy them from a specialty store. I know that there's like a beard product that like my husband really likes. Can't find it. He's gonna have to order it. It's not on Amazon. I think for like, a tiny little jar, he's looking at spending like $60 or
Oh my
something
word.
crazy to get it, but it's just they don't have it here. I think even as far as like the lotions too, I finally found like a Eucerin that like works well, but they didn't have, I use a very particular brand at home, that I couldn't find. But adaptability, flexibility, and creativity, I think is definitely the name of the game when it comes to stuff like that.
Now, I guess on the other side of the spectrum, you can't have your grits, but what's something that you're like, now this here is so good?
Chilaquiles. Chilaquiles. That's the answer. That's the whole chilaquiles. Discovering new, I feel like you just asked me several questions and like the only answers I had for you were food. I have not had dinner yet. I promise I think about other
Food is
things.
a big part of travel for me as well. So I'm like, oh my God, when I was there, I loved it.
I think definitely chilaquiles. It's my new favorite food. It's I don't want anyone Mexican to get mad. It's kind of like nacho. It's not like nachos. It's like tortilla chips that are like stir fried in either red or green sauce, and then you can top them with like beans or cheese or like a cream sauce they put on things, whatever you want. Chicken or shrimp. Oh my God, they're so good. They they have me in a chokehold. These chilaquiles. And I think the other thing is just like the variety of tacos all through Mexico. Um, just different kinds, whether it's like, fish, chicken, lingua, whatever it is. And, in some places they put, carrots or cabbage. And I don't know, it's so beautiful. I think, especially currently being in Mexico and the US is so kind of like Mexico adjacent. I feel like we know at least a little bit about Mexican culture just because, like, right, it's right there. We share a border. But you get here and it's like, I've never had, like, quartered carrots on my taco before. If someone gave me that in the US, I'd look at them crazy. This is a taco. But, you get here and the pride that Mexican people put into everything they do, including their food, it really comes through. And it's amazing. It's so beautiful. The people out here, even the way that they care for their homes and their businesses every morning, people are, hosing down driveways and sweeping the street. And they just really care, about everything they do. And I think that's so beautiful. And it's something that I'm trying to, integrate more into my day-to-day, activities, is like, making sure everything, even the little things you do, you're doing them with pride.
I love it. People are dropping in now. Now y'all got me hungry. Somebody talking about in Medellin, she had cream cheese on pancakes, and then she said then they pulled the syrup with the black lady on it. Now I'm like, you know what?
Oh,
I bet it was like the crispy pancakes too. Like,
yeah.
that sounds good. And then mint tea in Morocco. If you have never had it, it will make you go back just for some tea.
Yes.
Their mint leaves are different. Like something is just
I've seen, and they have like those long, fancy
yes,
ones.
yes.
Uh,
Yes, I don't know what they're doing over there, but it's different. It's better. It's everything. Yeah. So other people are traveling and eating their way through the world.
yes, I live vicariously through other travelers. I'm constantly checking stories because I'm like, yeah, that's a beautiful picture. It's a beautiful reel, whatever. But like, what did you eat today?
Yeah.
What
Like,
did you
where's the
eat?
food?
That's the footage, that I want to see.
I have that saved like everywhere. I'm like, and then one day when I go,
And now my friend, actually, she travels a lot. She has like one like Google Map saved of just like restaurant recommendations from
it's
all
on
over the world.
my list is places to try. And then
Ah,
when you go to the Google map, you can look and see if things are by you. So when you get to that country, have I saved anything from 3 years ago?
yeah,
I
I
just
feel I have a place. When I did my study abroad in Denmark, I had some squid in like the meatpacking district over there from this restaurant. I still dream about it. And it's been many years. And I keep telling myself, is the second I touch down in Copenhagen, that's the first stop. I couldn't remember the name of this restaurant. I spent a whole day on Google Maps, like street view, right? Like looking
like
around.
walking down the street.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna find that if it's the last thing I do, I'm having that squid again.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. See, and then you got to tell us because now I'm like, okay, there's a place in Denmark that we got to get some squid from.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned, of course, you're traveling, you're following a whole bunch of people on social media, but people can follow you and your journey and kind of see what's next for you and your family too. How can they do that?
Yes, you can head on over to Instagram and follow us at o.family.adventures. That's the best place. We're currently working on a couple other things. We have a blog, maybe a YouTube down the pipeline if someone wants to teach me how to edit videos. But yeah, we're over there every day in our stories, if not sharing things.
You definitely got to check that out. I know somebody is like, I got small kids and I'm waiting for them to grow up. Or either they got older kids and they're like, when my kid graduates. But we've definitely had some people and they've already talked about either their 20 or 18-year-old child. They're like, come on down here. Or I know Nubia talked about her son just recently moved to Playa del Carmen where she is. That was our speaker last week. So if you missed that, check that out as well. But definitely some great people that are doing it and showing the journey, the day to day, the ins and outs. You got the two nannies. I'm like, goodness gracious,
It sounds so opulent when you say it that way.
nanny for each child. I mean, it's
Yeah, that's
but we deserve Black women. We deserve this.
we
You do
do.
everything
Rest
and
is
spending all day on that
revolutionary.
daycare. You deserve it.
Mhm,
But then
definitely.
you're less stressed when that work day is over to actually spend time with your children and they've had
It's
a full day. They've gotten a lot of attention, all those things too. So I think that is an amazing experience overall.
yeah, we're getting richer in so many different ways. And I do think the exposure, along with the rest, along with the finances, along with just, um, stretching our brains and expanding our minds and our perspective to experience different things. It's beautiful, the tangibles and the intangibles that you gain from living this way.
I love it. And I know we're right against time. One thing, what is the best kind of experience or lesson that you've learned on this journey?
The best lesson that I've learned on this journey, gracious. I don't want to sound corny. I think, finding beauty in being able to flex and adapt. It's the kind of thing where you don't know how capable you are, how strong you are, how smart you are until you're in a position where you have the opportunity to show that and prove it. And then I also think changing your environment, your perspective, it helps to shift your mindset. Like I just said, being somewhere where people are visibly so dedicated to showing their pride for themselves and their businesses, their country, their community. These are things that then get to become a part of you. Taking little pieces of beauty from all around and being able to also, give back and leave what you have, that true exchange that comes with being a global citizen. It's beautiful. And I get to wake up and do it, every day. So I think that's definitely my favorite part so far.
I love it. Well, I am so happy that you joined us today. I am so excited to see Black people doing something that we ordinarily don't see Black folks doing. And I'm always excited for people who are doing it now, opposed to saying, when this happens. So, do you like Courtney did sell everything, cut it out, pack it up, and
Yes.
head on out?
It's lit over here.
So I love it. So I says, the Global Citizen Exchange sounds amazing. I think it's just a great way to kind of look at what you're getting. So you're giving and getting at the same time, and just making you more appreciative of what you have, and making just a better person overall, taking the greatness from each place that you go.
Definitely.
Well, thank you again, Courtney. Thank you to the babies who let us steal you away for a few, for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And we will continue to follow your journey at o.family.adventures on Instagram. Thank you. Have a good night,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.